Good morning. My name is, I keep thinking I hear my child making some interesting noises, but maybe it's not mine, that's okay. Whoever it is welcome. Hi, babes. So cute. My name is Keitha Ogbogu, and I'm the pastor here. And you know, there's this thing that you do on Thanksgiving where you sit at the table and you look at one another with love, and your mom says, what does she say? She says, turn to the person beside you and tell them what you're thankful for. And so I want us to take a moment to kind of force you to get out of your seats and force you to, or gently nudge you towards saying happy Thanksgiving to one another, and maybe sharing one or two things that you are thankful for before we dive into 2 Kings. So, see, that was what we knew, is they said, when I mentioned this to the worship team, they said either people are just going to do it or they're going to stare at you awkwardly. Stephen, you win. Feel free, stand up, turn around to the person beside you. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Yeah, I know. Happy Thanksgiving. See, you acted like you didn't want to do it, and you did. You know, for all of the gifts that you give your children, for all of the money and the time and the effort that you go into planning, whether it's their Easter basket or their birthday or stocking stuffers, which is my favorite part of Christmas morning, it tends to be the thing that you didn't buy for them that they really get excited about. So for Ezra, my littlest one, he loves the boxes. He loves the wrapping paper rolls. He loves the tape. We discovered he really likes tape recently. And I suspect that's going to change as my kids get older, but they're still young enough to kind of get excited about the unexpected things that grab their attention. Now, for my two older boys, it was in the midst of like many different gifts and toys and books and clothing that they received this $1, this one like $3 gift. And the $3 gift totally won their hearts. It was a flashlight. Now, this wasn't just any kind of flashlight, but it was the kind of, always having moments with the computer. But it was a kind of flashlight that you could put little discs inside. Do you remember, if you go way back to the 80s, remember those things you'd click and you'd see like the pictures coming through? So it's kind of like that, except it's modernized into a flashlight, so you can put the little discs in and then you look out and you'd see a picture of a dinosaur or a whale or a lion, which was amazing all on its own. But the thing that really grabbed their attention wasn't that it made these kind of big pictures on the wall. What was amazing to them was that if you come into our home, leading down into the basement, there's this door, and at the bottom of the door, there's a cat door. For those who know me well, you know we will never, ever have a cat. And we have no reason to have a cat door, except it was there when we moved in. But they looked through and they could point that flashlight down into like the darkness of the basement, and they were fascinated by this flashlight. They were fascinated by looking through that tiny square at the bottom of the drawer and the light that shines on the dark wall, and sometimes it would make a picture. But even now that they've lost all of those little discs, because we know things from the dollar store are high quality and intended to be kept for a very long time. So even though they've lost all of those little discs, they still love to go there when they can find the flashlight and peer through that little cat door and experience the unexpected joy of light. Light, unexpected. In 2 Kings, we meet a man named Naaman. He's the commander of the army of Aram, which would be a neighbor to Israel. And I find it interesting that the story kind of starts off with this picture of what we would describe as prevenient grace, the grace that goes before, in that the writer of 2 Kings attributes Naaman, someone outside of Israel, as given victory by God because of his character, because of his goodness. Somehow the author envisioned that Naaman's story was one that demonstrated God at work long before Naaman knows, recognizes, or can identify who God is. And the irony continues when in the very next line it's noted that Naaman suffers from leprosy. Now, in this context, leprosy would have been socially isolating. It would have removed him from the position of power and influence. And from his vantage point, it would appear that darkness is about to settle in for Naaman. His story of victory is going to be transposed into one of defeat. His moment of glory is being changed into one of despair. For all of his winning, now he is definitely going to start losing. And if you were Naaman, where could you imagine the possibility of hope emerging? From where would you look for a glimmer of light, for the unexpected arrival of healing? To whom and in which direction would you look, would you hope, would you imagine that your help might emerge from? For Naaman, it comes through a young girl, someone who is essentially plunder. She's been stolen from her homeland and forced to work for Naaman's wife. But she's not just someone who considers herself poor and unfortunate. She is not just stolen. She is not just a servant. Despite her circumstances, she has carried within her a past and a present defined by her ties to Yahweh. Long before she was stolen, long before she was taken, long before she became the property of another, she had heard the stories of the God of Abraham and Sarai, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Rachel. And she had heard the telling and retelling of the day the Red Sea opened up, the day water came from a rock, the day God saved them from Egypt. And these stories, these retellings had so infused her that when she sees her captors, the very ones keeping her from freedom, she feels compelled to point them towards their own freedom. Despite the cost, despite the risk, but also despite her own situation, this young woman chooses to offer a kindness to Naaman and points him in the direction of Elisha, the prophet in Israel. And it is her action as a peacemaker, as a light bringer, as a hope harbinger that is a message all by itself. That despite the darkness that surrounds us, despite the places our enemies find us, or worse yet, the spaces where our enemies have placed us, despite the barriers and the upsets, we are invited, we are called to usher in the gift of unexpected light. Now, when word gets to Israel that the king of Aram's right-hand man is coming to Israel to be cured of leprosy, the king of Israel is distraught. He knows he can't heal anyone, and that if this man does not emerge cured from his illness, that there are ramifications for his leadership and for his people. And the ways that this could become an international incident are imminent. And so the king of Israel laments. He tears his clothes, he cries out, and he is undone. And the irony is not lost on me that the one who was captured, the one who is held in bondage away from her family, away from her homeland, that she is the one who has this deep belief that there is someone greater than her situation, and she points Naaman towards someone greater than herself. While the one who is overwhelmed with the magnitude of what he cannot do or create on his own is the king. One recognizes the possibility of God, and the other laments the impossibility of self. And I am reminded that sometimes opportunity comes before us. Sometimes opportunity stands right in front of us to offer blessing and flourishing to another. Sometimes the opportunity comes right before us, right in front of us, to respond in such a way that Yahweh is praised. Sometimes the opportunity comes right before us, right in front of us, to participate in being and offering light, and we miss it. Instead, we calculate the ways we will be inconvenienced, the probability of success, the uncertainty of what's next, and we lose sight, and then we stop listening, and we find ourselves moving into the dark, rather than ushering self and others towards the light. And while there is something missed in those moments, there can also be something gained. While the king of Israel misses the opportunity to participate in offering light and hope and peace, he is precisely in the right spot to receive the unexpected glimmer of hope, piece of light, and reminder of who God is that he needs in that moment. You see, even when we get it wrong, even when we miss the moment, even when it seems the dark is too dark for the light to overcome, the same God who asks us to be the unexpected light for another asks others to be the unexpected light for us. And so Elisha the prophet sends a message to the king of Israel and subsequently to Naaman, telling him this healing is available. And so Naaman and his entourage find their way to Elisha's home. But before Naaman can even get through the gate, he gets to have his face-to-face with the prophet. A messenger comes out and instructs Naaman to go and wash in the Jordan River 7 times. Naaman is furious. How dare they ask him to do something so humble? How dare the prophet not operate in the manner he expected? How dare the prophet not come to meet him face to face? But once again, it is a servant, a humble voice that encourages Naaman to be obedient. Yet another harbinger of hope, a glimmer of light. And after going into the water 7 times, he emerges healed and whole. And one may imagine this is enough to end the story. But all of these signs of hope, all of these whispers of light, all of the revelations of the unexpected are intended to point Naaman not towards the Jordan River, not towards Elisha, not towards the king of Israel. No, they are intended to point him towards Yahweh, the God of Israel, who also happens to be the God who is equally concerned about Naaman the Aramean. And if you go further into the passage, you see that Naaman makes a proclamation that now he knows there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. And we might imagine that this is a sufficient end to the story. A neat and tidy wrap-up that embodies our Western ideas about what it means to have successfully encountered God. Instead, we see that Naaman both expresses devotion to the God of Israel and in the very next breath asks for permission to continue to worship an idol. Now, if you've read even a small bit of the Old Testament, you'll see that over and over and over again, it is idolatry that seems to stand in the way of Israel and her capacity to thrive. It's idolatry that's condemned again and again. It's idolatry that moves the people repeatedly away from a life that's entwined with who God is in exchange for practices and beliefs and actions that elevate crafted, impotent, powerless structures. Yet despite all that Elisha knows and all of the history and the law of Moses, when Naaman makes his request, Elisha does not reprimand. Elisha does not punish. Elisha does not respond with some kind of incredulity. Rather, he offers Naaman this famed phrase. He says, "Go in peace." He says, "Shalom." Elisha offers him a blessing of peace, another glimmer of light, another picture of hope. Walter Brueggemann puts it like this. He says, Elisha was not going to be vexed by the overt idolatry on the part of the healed general because he kept himself focused on the performance of shalom, not barter, on a contagious neighborliness and not on a burdensome apparatus or system. Elisha had other important work yet to do. He was bent towards the future in confidence that more wondrous acts of shalom could be done in days to come. He was unbothered and unencumbered by this ex-leper and his necessary idolatries. And you can almost hear Elisha tell the modern church, go and do likewise. Except the reality is it's hard. It's hard to offer light. It's difficult to be a picture of hope. It's costly to be the one who speaks and lives out shalom when the return on that investment isn't always what you imagined, what you expected, what you longed for, or what you planned for. Somehow, even in the offering of light, we can find ourselves like Naaman, frustrated, disappointed, and willing to walk away when it doesn't appear that what we have to give, what we have given, the words we have offered, the actions we have invested, that they are being multiplied in tangible ways. One of the hazards of being a Christ follower is that somehow we are compelled by Christ to participate in the manifestation of and the offering of shalom, meaning to be peacekeepers. This idea of peace is a powerful one because it goes far beyond the notion of being anti-conflict and moving towards becoming a participant in the blessing and flourishing of one another. And so Christians throughout the ages have found themselves in places offering goodness and care and love and hope as these small conduits of unexpected light. And this can be beautiful when it's fruitful. This is energizing when progress is happening. This is exciting when our expectations are met. But sometimes in our offering of shalom, in our engagement with one another, in our tearing down and building up, we can find ourselves perplexed by those who eagerly announce their devotion and their allegiance to the way of Jesus while simultaneously holding on to their idols, holding on to the system that displaces, holding on to the practice that harms, holding on to the luxury that entangles, holding on to the belief that excludes, holding on to the institutional models that are obsolete, holding on to the thinking, the action, the perspective, the ideology that defies who Jesus is, that moves in the opposite direction of a life that cares deeply about one another, that is formed in love and seeks the good of all. And in those moments, when light doesn't seem to be enough, when hope doesn't seem to be enough, when shalom seems an empty practice, the temptation is to stop offering love, to stop being light, to stop whispering hope, to let go of shalom because it's too costly and too dangerous and far too unpredictable. Yet it is the same God that's described in this morning's scripture reading that says, even when we are faithless, he remains faithful, that we model in our offerings of light and hope and shalom. Several years ago, a woman walked into my office and she had attended the church I was pastoring for a few weeks, and I hadn't quite met her yet. She came with her children and her partner, and they came to me one day and they said, we want our son to be baptized. Now, after some conversation, I learned more about her, and she had struggled with addictions for a very long time, but was finally in a more healthy direction. Later, she told me that she had attended seminary several years before, but had stopped due to funding, and she outlined stories of functional and dysfunctional moments. But she was so proud of herself that she had now achieved sobriety, and she was no longer using. And I had the privilege of baptizing her son, of walking with her through scripture, of helping her look for work and bring others from the church community to stand with her and her family. But it was about 6 months or 7 months later, after our first meeting, that she walked into my office in the middle of the afternoon, and I knew that she was using again. Now, she brushed it off. She said she could handle it. It was nothing. But her choices, coupled with the disease of addiction, led to a series of negative and painful impacts, and eventually we lost touch. It would be several years later that I discovered she had had an overdose and she had died alone in the hospital. And I was heartbroken. I was thinking about her children and the bright light she was to them when she was well, the dreams she had, the potential that lived within her, and her deep curiosity about who God is and who God could be to her. In my disappointment and sadness, I spoke with a friend of mine who had journeyed with that family alongside me and noted how all we had offered seemed to have been wasted. And then he stopped me. And he reminded me that the offering of shalom, the goodness we plant, the seeds we offer, all of it creates impact simply for the sake of itself and because of the work of the Spirit. And he reminded me that for the season that we knew her, she knew that she was loved and accepted and enfolded. Her kids had the opportunity to engage with healthy families and would have memories of a moment in time when their mom was healthy. He went on to describe and point out the little gifts that had been offered and received, and insisted that the goodness that was offered and received, and the goodness that was offered, and some of it that was left behind or rejected, are all of the reasons combined that we would do it again. That if we were given the opportunity, we would stand with women like her, we would stand with families who are struggling. All of the reasons that we shouldn't give up on goodness. All of the reasons that we shouldn't stop offering shalom. The unexpected light. The whispers of hope. The offering of shalom. Sometimes it is all there is. No bounty, no signpost, no grand story of miraculous transformation, yet all on its own, being light, offering hope, speaking shalom is enough. In the story of Naaman, it was interesting that as I was reading some different authors and commentaries, one of them noted that what is the point of healing this man if he doesn't fully turn to God? He said, why even mention it? And I thought, this negates the inherent goodness and gift that Naaman received when he was healed, and the ways his capacity increased to reproduce that goodness and healing in his own context. That statement negated the powerful narrative of a God at work along the way. God at work when Elisha was present. God also at work when a servant girl is mindful. God at work when a king is in flux. God at work when a powerful man is humble enough to go into the Jordan River. And this leaves me to wonder if it is in our reframing the point of our offerings of goodness and love and service as both the means and the end that will allow us to say the unexpected light, the whispers of hope, the offering of shalom are enough all by themselves. Brueggemann says this, he says, we are called to be like Elisha in the shalom business. We are to be on alert when our close camp comrades do not get it, and to be not much vexed when the ex-lepers rush back to their idolatries. We're the only ones in town who stand against the quid pro quo and know that leprosy can be wiped out only with the free gift of shalom. We dare to enact shalom and then move on to the next chance of performing shalom again, not lingering over the betrayal and ingratitude that seems to come with it. Such a calling is impossible for us unless we find those who will affirm us in our own idolatries, both overt and covert, and nothing less, and nonetheless give us freedom from the leprosy that we cannot shake off for ourselves. Elisha kept himself free for the gift of shalom. It is the same gift with which we engage every day, a small operation that transforms the world, one leper at a time. ask the worship team to come forward. My prayer is that we would have the boldness of wide-eyed children who are fascinated by what light can do in the dark. That we would find our way with flashlights in hand towards the bottom of doors and the cracks along the walls, in and among the shadows of life. And that we would be courageous enough to offer unexpected light, undeserved hope, and the beauty of shalom as we seek to participate in and co-create the renewal of all things. That we would be so compelled to follow in the steps of Jesus, to follow in the steps of God himself, noting the great gift of light and hope and shalom that we were once offered. The same gift that we have so often dismissed and exchanged for an idol, the same gift that eventually led us right where we are and creates change despite of where we are. It is this gift, the unexpected light, the whispers of hope, the offering of shalom. This is our calling. This is our invitation. This is our mission. This is our mandate. I want us to take a moment and breathe in those words, what he's done, and to think about our gratitude and our gratefulness for what he's done for us, for how he saved us, for how he has brought us to where we are today. And I want us to say, amen. And then I want us to think about that same God and what he's done for us. And I want you to take that same power, that same passion, that exact same feeling that you have about that, and I want you to pass it on to others. What he's done for us is not just for us, but is for the world around us. And if it's only what he's done for me, then it's not enough and it's not good enough. And it means our faith is not deep enough. But if we take those same words and we are challenged by them, what he's done for me, what he's done for us, and we allow that to transform the way we engage with the world around us, that's where it happens. That's where it happens. And so this week as you go, filled with thanksgiving for a God who is great, a God who is good, a God who is glorious. May we pass that on to those around us. May we pass on unexpected signs of light. May we pass on unexpected moments of shalom and peace. May we pass on unexpected whispers of hope. Have a blessed week. Happy Thanksgiving.